we set up a company-wide meeting on innovation. We went through some exercises, some thought exercises of like, what if we came up with a way to do things that seems completely like ridiculous? It's like the exact opposite. The one that was shared as an example is, we like to communicate with our clients all the time. We're heavy communicators with our clients. We believe reaching out to them is really important. We think having meetings on a consistent basis is important. What if the best way to serve our clients is to never talk to them? What would that look like? Like, what if that's the best way? Now, we all know that's not what we're going to do, but it's to show you, like, let's turn things upside down and let's really think about what would that look like?
Welcome to Encouraging Leaders, a podcast that exists to remind CEOs and aspiring CEOs that you do not have to lead alone. I'm Mark D. Braun, and today I'm joined by a good friend and a great leader, Chris Kerckhoff. Chris is the president and CEO of Plancorp, a wealth management firm here in St. Louis, serving clients around the world. When he stepped into the president's role, they had $1 billion in assets under management, and today they've grown that to over $7.5 billion. What an incredible story. What I love is I've gotten to see the culture, and he's doing that with excellence as well, building a people-centric culture where the people are aligned in helping serve those clients with their best and brightest. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be here. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Well, Chris, I do start the conversation off each time with the same question, which is just if you think about going back in your leadership journey, either when you stepped into that president role or anytime before then or after, when did you learn that you didn't have to do this role of leadership alone?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mark. It's a great one. And I feel very fortunate that my experience in not feeling the need to go alone goes back to, I would even say, college days. That when I was in the business school at Indiana University, there was a big focus on group projects, which initially I couldn't stand because I felt like the weakest link was going to basically determine the outcome. But as we kept having these group projects, it forced you to get better at them and forced you to figure out how to maneuver a way to raise the group up and try and hit the highest mark you could and really draw on people's strengths and not try and push the heavy boulder up the hill. If somebody didn't want to do this part of the project, you just had to find a different part of the project that they would be more excited about. Yeah. So then when I got into the business world, I was very fortunate, probably by year 3 or 4 of Plancorp, where I had these great mentors who were leading the organization at that time. And it was a very collaborative approach to decision making. So Jeff Buckner, our founder, used to say, control is an illusion. So even though he had complete legal control of the company, he involved several of us in decision making and trying to drive alignment and making sure that, we were all heard and we could all openly disagree if need be. But once a decision was made, we were all going to align behind it and drive towards the best outcome. So it's been a journey, but I'd say one that started, fortunately for me, very early on.
Yeah, it's great. I remember in college, in the engineering world, we didn't have a lot of joint projects. And so your grade was your grade. And when I stepped out into the real world, that was the first time I could feel the weight. And it was like, wait a minute, how do I do this with everybody else? And I love your comment about the shift from thinking that the lowest performer on the team is going to determine the grade to actually align around what's your strengths and put people in the right roles so that we get our highest mark. Yeah. And then you step into Plancorp, but you stepped right out of the university, right into this role.
I did. Yeah.
And you have a leader who's showing you what collaborative leadership looks like from that early time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's such a
wonderful gift. Yeah.
Powerful gift. He was a coach and a mentor for you during that time, and you were learning and seeing that. And then talk to me, you step into the role of president, and now it's your team. And tell me what lessons that brought into the mix now that you're actually not just collaborating and not just contributing, but leading.
Well, I like to tell people, as I've told this story before, that it's wonderful to be able to cheat. And the cheat here was that I had been at the company already. So I was named president in June of 2010. And at that point, I had been at the company for 13 years. And I was employee number 5, and we had turned over most of those 5. And so there were just 3 of us out of that 5 left. And then I was the one that was hiring everybody underneath or alongside me. So in many ways, this was a team that I had recruited, trained, helped develop, and kind of set the structure for how we were going to collaborate together. And so it was a very natural thing to step into a leadership role with that group because most of them I had directly hired, if not had influence in the hiring process. So it was, again, a gift to be able, my first step into leading a company with a team that I wasn't inheriting. I had actually had a big hand and role in building it from the outset. So from that point, it was really just thinking about who was going to be able to fit into different responsibilities and roles that we needed to drive forward in the business. And also being very clear that this was going to change over time. We were going to start here, but as we continue to grow, the leadership team is going to be fluid to meet the needs of the business. So I don't want anyone to take it personally when it's time to roll off, or even think that you're going to be here for a set period of time. I'll keep the communication very open and transparent, but there's going to be movement on the leadership team in the future.
Yeah. Well, I think it is a unique gift to be able to be there whenever you were able to assemble the team before you step into the leader role. It's quite a gift. But going from $1 billion in assets under management to $7.5 billion, that is a lot of growth. And so tell me, what has been one of the challenges that you've faced that really, has gone, oh boy, this is a big one. This is going to be hard.
Well, I think like most businesses, and certainly in the professional services business, it's all about the people, right? So when you talk about challenges, I heard this explained recently, and I don't want to butcher it too directly by trying to come up with the exact math, but it's the exponential relationship of every time you add a new person in a group or a company, now you've exponentially increased the number of relationships, right? You think of like two people, there's just one relationship. Three people, now there's four relationships, and it just kind of grows beyond. It seems like most businesses, not just ours, once you get to this, like you tip over that 10 to 12 people and you have more than that, 10 to 12, you can be very close knit, and it's communication is super easy.
Yeah, you're all friends.
Yeah. And then you go to 20 and you're like, okay, there's a little different, but you're still pretty close. I always think of it as like, you can fit in one person's basement for a dinner, right? Like
Right.
that can all still happen. And then you go to 30 and beyond, and that's a new plateau of complexity. There's a level of trust that you have to start developing and empowering that next group of leaders to make sure that they're going to follow through on things. So I would say, as we grew the headcount of the business to meet the needs of our clients, and we continued to try and level up our service lines and just make sure we were always hiring the best and brightest we could to develop them to meet the needs of our current and future clients, that complexity just builds as you scale the number of headcount. So to me, there were these kind of breakpoints, like around 20 employees. Once we've been above that, it seemed like there was a order of complexity. It seemed to happen again somewhere around, let's say, like 45-ish employees. And again, we're probably coming up on another one as we close in on 100 people. We're starting to feel that again. Okay, we probably need some more support for people. We've got formalized training. We have some formalized development, but we probably need some more direct report or supports and coaching for people as the organization continues to grow, because our mission is, the reason we exist is to inspire confidence for life's journey. And we're always very clear that's first and foremost for clients, but it's also very much for our people internally. And so if you're going to help make people successful, you need additional resources to do that. And as the company grows and scales, you have to grow the resources for your people in addition to the resources for your clients.
Yeah, I love that you have a mission that's for your clients, but it also for your employees. Can you restate it again?
Sure. It's we inspire confidence for life's journey.
Yeah. And so you're able to do that for your clients, but you also feel that same desire for your employees.
Absolutely.
How important has it been to unify, or how beneficial has it been? Because there's a lot of companies that have one that's external and then they try to make one that's internal, but yours actually covers both. How helpful has that been? What has that meant to you?
Well, the truth is I'm going to be, a little vulnerable here and tell you, Mark, that it probably has not been as helpful as it should have been, because we've recently talked about this as a leadership team. While we talk about it internally, we don't talk about it nearly enough. We talk about it about our clients all the time, day in, day out. But how often do we focus on that messaging for our team? Maybe once a year, twice a year. Like, it should be part of the kind of the true day in and day out culture, not just for clients, but also for team members. How do we support each other? How do we make sure that people have confidence in the jobs that they're tasked with doing, with their role, and what the future roles that they have opportunity to grow into? So we've really stated a goal this year to live into that more on a consistent daily basis with our team as well as with our clients. And
Well,
hopefully that'll show the benefit. I mean, again, I
yeah.
think it's been beneficial, but I
So
think
you mean you're not perfect yet?
no, we're not
Okay,
perfect yet.
good.
Yeah.
I'm glad you've still got things to work on. My thought about that is, you had something actually to come back to say we're not actually doing it. Like if it was only a client statement and no one thought about it as an employee statement, there would be nothing to correct against. And so I just love that you had something, a statement that people could say, hey, listen, I don't think we're actually spending enough time communicating and clarifying this mission for our employees.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do get a chance to see a lot of businesses in my line of work, and also in the last, just over the last 15 years, I've probably been inside of 200 plus businesses that are world class, that are on the top of their culture game, and you are on the top of your culture game. And so, people point from the outside looking in and say, I want to do it the way that Plancorp is doing it. I had the pleasure of meeting with some of your board members, and they said the key advantage that you have as Plancorp is your culture of employee trust and their willingness to go out and aligned and make that push for clients together and serve them together. So first of all, it's great that you're not perfect. Second of all, just know that you're doing pretty darn well.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, you're talking about communication rhythms, is what I heard. As you got to different stages, you had to change how you communicate and clarify those communications. And it changes at every one of those stages. At
Yeah.
2 people, you can just go out to lunch every day. At 10, you can. 20, you can't. Tell me, what are some of the best communication rhythms that you find helpful for you and your team?
Well, it's a work in progress. So I can tell you the things that have worked really well is setting up a calendarization of regular meetings at various levels. So these things are baked in and they're, like I said, they're highly calendarized. So it's the second Tuesday of every month. I can't remember all of them. We have a lot of meetings at this point, but my leadership team meets every Monday over lunch. That's every Monday.
Yeah, so every Monday,
Everyone
you're
knows
together.
what the time is. If you can't make it, that's fine. Give everyone advance notice. No big deal. You can join virtually. We have that technology. Prefer for people to be in person, but every Monday we're going to meet. And that's really, we use a platform that captures all of the issues in advance. All issues have to be submitted before Friday, end of the day on Friday. So people over the weekend or Monday morning can read through issues and make sure they're up to speed on what we're going to be talking about. And then if you miss the meeting, you can go back in and see exactly what was discussed in all the issues. We keep minutes for all this stuff. And so I would say, we're just always looking for ways to improve. Mark, because we're friends, that I'm such a big fan of James Clear and just always continuous improvement. Even before he read his book, if you ask me what sets us apart as a competitive advantage is Plancorp is truly dedicated to continuous improvement. The Atomic Habits kind of drove home and made a common language across our company that we use, but we've always done it this way, which is how can we get better at this? We're doing fine, but how can we improve it? And so it starts to me with the leadership team. And then it starts to work out from there with all the individual teams across the company. And then recognizing, okay, there's also times we need to get everybody in the company all together. When I say all together, that includes virtual these days, of course. But, how do we call them the big picture meetings. Every other month, we're going to have a meeting with the entire company, and it can cover a whole host of issues. Obviously, anything that's really critically important to the business. But we try and stay away too much from business performance because we have quarterly meetings that are company-wide that include the board. In fact, we do them the morning of the board meeting. So the board hears exactly what everybody in the company is hearing on the lines of business performance report. So we just try and be intentional. We try as best we can to also get feedback and say, hey, are there meetings we need to cut out that just aren't working? We don't need to keep meeting for meeting's sake. And so if there's some of these that aren't working, let's get rid of them. So, we at least once a year try and assess that as well. So I think it's focusing on how you can improve, but also spending at least a little bit of time of saying what's not working so we can cut that out. Because if you're just constantly adding, then it becomes noise, right? So it
Yeah.
also has to be, okay, how do we get better? But then how can we cut some things so that we're really being effective?
You said a lot of good things there. You've got rhythms, they're calendarized, people can understand them. One of those rhythms is a weekly leadership team meeting where everybody understands this is how we do it, this is how we address issues, this is where I go if I need to learn about what was covered if I'm not there. And that gets standardized, and then you can improve what's standardized. There's a concept in continuous improvement, just you can't improve what you don't have a standard around. And so
Right.
having a standard rhythm allows you to those then have that continuous improvement. What do you think, what is one of your habits, or how you talk about continuous improvement? Because you're setting that tone, and you've been setting it for a long time. How do you think through if there's somebody on the listening end that's saying, I don't have a continuous improvement culture,
Yeah.
I want one. What would you have them do? What would you recommend?
Well, I can tell you how we did it. I'm sure there's a lot of ways to skin the cat here, but I would tell you we kicked it off because I felt like we were, as we were adding headcount, this was sometime probably in, I don't know, maybe 2015 or so. As we were kind of hitting, it was probably that 40, 45 person headcount area. I felt like our continuous improvement was slowing down. I felt like it was getting a little too top down. Um,
Bureaucratic.
yeah. And so we set up a company wide meeting on innovation. And so we went through some exercises, some thought exercises of like, what if we came up with a way to do things that seems completely like ridiculous, like the exact opposite. Like, so like the one that was shared as an example is, you know, we like to communicate with our clients all the time. Like we're heavy communicators with our clients. We believe reaching out to them is really important. We think having meetings on a consistent basis is important. What if the best way to serve our clients is to never talk to them? What would that look like?
Mm.
Like, what if that's the best way? Now we all know that's not what we're going to do, but it's to show you like let's turn things upside down and let's really think about what would that look like? How would we think about that? And everybody could come up with one area of the business that they wanted to kind of flip on their head, put a one-page kind of case together, and then we shared it out. And from that, you actually get some really interesting ideas that are like, that's a different way to look at it. So let's
Yeah.
put that on the board. Like, let's put it on the board. And then we captured this huge parking lot of ideas. And we said, look, we're probably not going to do most of these. Like, let's just be realistic. But how cool is this exercise to think about?
Yeah, well, I love it. The innovation day. So first of all, I've heard continuous improvement in your language in every description. So as you set up the organization, you were talking about continuous improvement when you said, we're not going to be here forever. This is just the coordinated flight pattern we're going to be in right now, and we might have to change it, and that's
Yeah.
okay. And so don't get set. You're okay with change. But getting other people okay with change is actually hard. And so I really like it's kind of reminds me of First Break All the Rules, which is a book by Mark, guy at, you know the one,
Yeah. Yep.
Buckingham, I think. Anyway, he basically says, can you just say, don't do it that way at all? And it can be a bad idea, but it's the first idea and it gets the ideas flowing, and you have to be okay with failure. And so whenever you're coming up with bad ideas, you're getting people okay with failure. And so I think it's a really cool way to do it. Did you have a facilitator there, or did you facilitate that?
I facilitated that one. Yeah.
Yeah. I just think it's a cool idea. Just get everybody together and talk about innovation and ask them to come up with stupid ideas, bad ideas, which you know are not going to work, and then see what flows from that. Write them down, one page, and then present that. And from that, ideas started flowing. It's a
Yeah.
really cool, creative way to do it. I'm just wondering, any of the patterns that you have when you're looking for ideas, you've got a process committee there. How are you celebrating when changes are happening?
Yeah. Here again, I wouldn't give us a great grade on celebrating the wins. In fact, I was earlier today. It's funny you asked that. I was just talking to our CFO and um, our interim COO as well, and saying, you know, look, we've done all these great things on the technology side of the house and process improvement across the back office side of the company. Where are we capturing the benefits that we've driven? The improvements that we've driven. We know anecdotally that there's big improvements, right? That's there's no question. Everyone's like, oh yeah, that was fantastic. But where are we measuring, you know, okay, we put in place this case workflow inside Salesforce, whereas before it was a series of tasks that this workflow kicked off. And now all the information is in a case, and the case just gets moved along across the appropriate team members. You can track it, report on it. Um, and where have we tracked how we've gotten better either more accurate, more efficient, and faster at something? And what time have we saved the team? Where do we have that data? And if we don't have it, that's okay. Like, let's not beat ourselves up that we didn't do that from the outset. Let's know exactly how much time these things take today as the baseline and think about how we're going to improve it. So I think it's, again, I'm just being vulnerable. We are not as good as we should be. Some of these things we've actually had external partners of ours come back and say, wow, you guys
You're
went
really fast here.
your efficiency on this and the accuracy took a jump that we've never seen before. What happened here? And then it stayed up at this new level. And we said, oh, we put in a new case workflow. And they're like, well, can we come see it? And I said, well, maybe not, but it's good to know that you've got the data that shows it's really working. And so we did celebrate that broadly. We even shared it with the board, with the entire team. But we need to be better about actually being able to report on all the data. We have all the data. It's just, how do you take the time to, and AI is certainly going to help with this, right? It's perfect at taking large amounts of data and then synthesizing it and producing something that is more digestible. So
Yeah.
I have high hopes that we'll get better at celebrating those things, but we haven't been as good as we should be on those things.
Well, you've given yourself the idea, it sounds like, of possibly one of the best practices that I've seen is a rhythm where people can actually share with others their own story. And the power of it is whether it's actually capturing the benefit or not, it's just seeing them emote and share the story of what they improved and what they think the benefit is.
Yeah.
And that can be a huge win by itself.
Twice a year, we have key stakeholder meetings for a full day. All the shareholders and other key people leader across the organization get off site. And in a couple of those, we've had long tenured team members share like, guys, I want to take you back in time. Here's how I did my job 8 years ago or 10 years ago. And here's what we do now. Like, look at the improvements and how much better this is for the client, for me. And so I think taking that longer lens of like, hey, these things have gotten a lot better, and they've gotten a lot better because we've been dedicated to continuous improvement. Each little change you don't feel is like this big leap forward. But if you go back farther in time with a long enough lens, you're like, whoa, that's been transformative. I got into this interesting conversation with the leader a few months ago. We were both being interviewed, and the question was about innovation. And his comment was, every 2 to 3 years, I have to completely reinvent myself, and you have to completely reinvent the business. And I said, my take on that's a little bit different. I don't necessarily disagree that every, whatever, pick your time frame, 3 years, I think it's probably more 3 to 5 years, the business should have gone through a transformation.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, my view is if you're dedicated continuous improvement, that's not an event, that's a journey.
Yeah.
So it's not that I took a giant leap up this mountain in 3 years' time. At a 3-year mark, I didn't make this big leap. I took 3 years to get to that point, to be up on that position on the mountain. And that's going to be that's much more satisfactory, greater
it's more
satisfaction.
sustainable. It's stronger. It's stronger for the team. The team can do it together instead of one person.
And it's repeatable. That's the other thing.
Exactly. And I think about valuations. I would pay more for it. If I see breakthrough and then I see breakthrough and then I see breakthrough, or if I see continuous improvement that's made the same jump over the last 10 years, I will pay more for the continuous improvement one than I will for the breakthrough ones. Yep. And the reason is because the breakthroughs are possibly going to happen again, but the continuous improvement culture actually knows how to do it. They've been doing it on an ongoing basis.
I agree. And I also think you are de-risking things, because if you do these incremental improvements along the way, you're going to learn more and you're going to be able to make these vector changes.
Yeah.
So you're more likely to land the plane in the right spot. If you're like not reassessing and you take these big leaps all at once, there's just a lot more inputs you have to calculate for, a lot more scenarios that could come up. And it's harder to learn all the things that I would argue you should learn along the way.
Yeah.
And you're probably going to make bigger mistakes as opposed to several little mistakes you can course correct.
You can course correct every time, and you can serve your clients all the way throughout.
Yep.
It. Yeah, transform the business every 3 years. Sounds like you're going to break the plane and see if you can rebuild it in mid-flight, and you don't need to.
Right. In today's world, like especially, let's say that period of time of the unicorn companies everybody fell in love with, talking about reinventing the company and disrupting the whole thing every 3 years sounded really cool.
Yeah.
I think it just sounds risky. To me, it's like, well, you get to the same spot, but you do this on a much more consistent, measured basis. So
Yeah. Sometimes everything comes together and you guys just get to knock it out of the park. Tell me a time when you or the team got to just celebrate a win that felt like, bam, we nailed it.
Boy, that's such a good question. I think the one that stands out to me is when we finished the first leg of the succession journey. And what I mean by that is, you know, we bought out the original three shareholders of the company at the end of 2021. That was a journey we started when I first bought into the company. I was named president back in June of 2010. So
11 years.
you're talking about an 11-year journey.
Yeah.
A lot of effort, a lot of work, a lot of innovative thought, a lot of mistakes, and course corrections along the way. And it really just ended that chapter of the journey well, and in a great spot. So everybody was really excited and energized to have finished that first leg of the journey, and it was very, very energizing, and really proud of the team, and it was a great win, I think, for us and for the clients. You know, the clients, when we first announced the succession plan, were very supportive, very excited. And then as rightfully so, for them, it was just like, oh, well, that's the plan. They're going to make that happen. It's all good. And I'm sure they didn't think about it again. But, you know, you do a lot of work behind the scenes. And I do firmly believe that a strong succession plan, especially in a service business, is for the huge benefit of clients, to make sure that the company is durable, is not going to have this like event that disrupts the client's experience. And so just, yeah, that's what stands out.
I love that one. A lot of effort by a lot of people over a long period of time, and you get to celebrate it because everybody actually won from the succession plan. There's so many businesses that don't have succession plans for their own leaders. They don't have them for their owners. They don't have them for every spot along the way. And it takes intentional work before it's necessary to do it. So you were working on that 11 years. That's unbelievable grit.
And well, and I think like you should always you should celebrate anytime you get a win-win. But when you get a win-win-win, for me, that was a win for the second generation of shareholders. It was a win for clients, and it was a win for the founding generation of shareholders. It was a win for everybody. You don't get those very often. You know, that's a tough one to pull
worthy
off
of celebration. Yeah. Going back to 2010, you're stepping into this role of president, and now you're 15 years. You've got 15 years more of experience and wisdom. You can say anything to him. What would you tell the younger Chris, either at president level, whenever in 2010, or even back in 1997 when you step into Plancorp? What does he need to know, and what would you like for him to know before he gets started?
That's a wonderful question. I think to me the answer would be to trust your instincts and be less fearful of the hard decisions. Like, because as a young leader, you just feel totally unprepared and overmatched, right? I mean, that's the feeling, is you're just like, I don't even know if this is the right decision that they just made. But you trust these mentors and these people who made the decision. You're excited about it. But at the same time, you're just like, I have no idea if I can do this, you know? And so especially early on, those big decisions, you have a pretty good sense of what needs to happen, but you're really scared to make the wrong decision. So waiting a bit longer than you need to, I don't know that it causes huge problems, but it definitely causes undue stress for the organization. You know, I'm sure it caused some undue stress to my, fellow stakeholders, and I don't think anything actually impacted clients. I'm trying to think of big decisions, but it definitely caused me a lot of stress that I look back. Why was I worried about that? Like, that was not something to be worried about.
You could just use the "don't worry, be happy," but I love your first statement, which is trust your intuition. You've got this, and make the decisions that need to be made.
Yeah. One of my favorite all-time clients once said to me, he was asking me all these questions, and I kept kind of soft pedaling answers. And he said, look, Chris, your job is to make decisions and recommendations to me. My job is to take your recommendations and go do them. And if you give me bad advice, I fire you. And you get another client and life goes on. That's what happens. This is not the end of the world. Okay.
Okay, maybe I can go ahead and be more decisive.
It's like, hey, your job is to make decisions, and you just have to accept that you're not going to be perfect in decision making, but you have to make those decisions and move forward.
Yeah, well, it's such great advice. Well, if you are listening and you would like to get in contact with Chris, you can find him at Plancorp. If you'd like to get in contact with me, you can find me at encouragingleaders.com. I just want you to know that you're not alone. If you're listening, you don't have to lead alone. There are other people who can walk alongside you and help guide you through that journey. And so it just I love being part of that. I love being part of Plancorp and seeing the growth, Chris, and you and your team. I love to see the excellence that you're building and the continuous improvement culture that you're stewarding. And
Yeah.
it's really great to spend the time with you today. So thank you so much for being here, sharing your heart with our listeners.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate your excellent work and your friendship.
Take care.